Good evening, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here with you. Coming to Modesto feels like coming home. As she said, I graduated from Turlock High. I went to the military right after high school. I did 4 years in the United States military as a combat medic. Began there my love of hospitals and healthcare, and I was a kid who didn't do great in high school, and the military gave me the discipline that I know I needed in order to know that I was a part of something greater than myself. Right? And once you begin to learn those lessons, I think as a young person, those are things you don't forget. I also learned internal discipline, right? I learned how to have a mission and stay focused and make sure you get it done. When I got out, I felt ready to go to college, and then I started my degree in psychology at Stanislaus State. At that time, I started working in counseling in the drug and alcohol and the addictions field. So I was there in the beginning. I saw the epidemic go from, at that time, heroin, to crack cocaine, then to methamphetamine, and now we're back to opioids again. So dealing with a lot of that, a lot of mental health issues. I got my MSW, and I started being a hospice social worker. And what I learned there, so let me go back for 1 second and say, military taught me discipline. Working in substance abuse taught me that people expect and respect you to call BS for BS, because we're all meaning-making people, right? Trying to be goal-directed. And so sometimes in order to help people, you need to be able to say, no, I don't think that's appropriate. And I like to think that's one of the reasons I've been successful, because I am not afraid to speak my mind. People trust my word, because I tend to be pretty straightforward. I then started doing hospice work, and when you sit with a lot of people as they're dying, you learn a whole lot about living, right? And one of the things I learned is that for the most part, when people take that last step out of this world, they want to know that there was something there that fills a space where their life was. Whether that was a good mom, or whether that was a good cook, or whether they were a part of their community, whatever that was. And so that has always been a part of my thing about how do we provide as many opportunities for people as we possibly can, so that they can then become their own agent of their own life. I came from a very working class family. My grandparents came to this country from Mexico on one side, and on the other side they came up out of the Dust Bowl, immigrants picking fruit up and down the valley. So they didn't really know how to be involved in politics, but were active and wanted to be. My grandparents became citizens so they could vote for John F. Kennedy, right? Because at that time he was the first Catholic, and in a Catholic's house, right? Then you had the picture on the wall, the Holy Trinity of JFK, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and the Pope, right? Sometimes in velvet, sometimes not, but that was right. That my North Star. That Democrats stood for education. They stood for giving people a chance. They stood for embracing. They stood for the dreams of what we can be. And so again, then being a social worker. When I got my MSW is when I really kind of came into myself, like, who am I? I am a social worker. And that's one of those things that you really think about, like, how do I use myself as a servant? Right? I am not somebody who is rich. I work for everything I ever had, and I know that a lot of people are doing that, and they need the opportunity to do that. And so when Dr. Dunbar encouraged me to get my PhD and to teach, I could think of no better way to spend my life than training more people to be, I think, good social workers with integrity and there for the right reasons. So I went to Portland, got my PhD, and then when I came back, my mom was sick in Turlock. I got a job at Sac State, and so Stockton was in the middle. So that's how I ended up in Stockton. Because as the eldest child in a Mexican-American family, it was my job to be going back and forth taking care of my mom, and then working at Sac State. And then, God rest her soul, she died in 2002. And so then at that time, and I'll say I've had a lot of experience with loss. I cared for my godmother, I cared for my grandmother, I cared for my mother, and then I thought, what else should I be doing? And then my partner was diagnosed with cancer. So then we took care of her, and I thought, okay, there's nothing but more I can do than just love fully. And then George W. Bush got elected to presidency the second time, right? And it was one of those life-altering moments, because the day after Tuesday was Wednesday. It was always faculty meeting day, and everybody in the faculty sat around like, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? This is so terrible. And it was one of those moments like table banging, like, we can sit around and worry about what somebody else is going to do, but if we're not willing to get into the arena ourselves, then what are we doing? And as social workers, we were trained in systems thinking and speaking to people and groups and individuals and solving social problems, or at least trying to, and empowering others voters, why aren't we running and why aren't we teaching our students how to be good, effective elected leaders? Because you can talk to somebody about depression all you want, but if you can't find policy to change the situations in which they live, then they can never find ways to help themselves. So I decided to get involved and run for office. I love teaching. I still renew my leave at Sac State every year in case this gig stops working out at some point. I got my fallback plan because I'm mission focused. So I said, I'm running for the next office, and that happened to be Stockton City Council, right? And so at that time, people were like, well, you can't run, you haven't lived here your whole life, you're a Latina, you're an out lesbian, right? Like, you can't tell anybody. I'm like, well, I look like a big old lesbian, so what am I supposed to say? Who am I? And then who is my partner then? Now my wife of 25 years, my cousin, that's awkward. And I don't want to be hooked up with every man my age to go to the chamber events, which I'll have to do. So I said, you know what, again, being who I am, people don't have to vote for me, but I will never lie about who I am. Because if I lie about who I am, then what makes you think I won't lie to you about everything else? Right? So I said, I am running as me. And I trust the voters to decide who they want to represent them. And I was very lucky that or lucky or not lucky, I don't know, but they decided that they wanted me to represent them. So I served in the Stockton City Council with the help of a lot of social workers, walk-in precincts, and I'm proud to say every year I served on the Stockton City Council, I had with me 2 MSW graduate students who did their internships with me out organizing in the community, working around parks areas, coordinating around violence. We had a young man who was shot and killed, and that became every year somebody's project was to do a Take Back the Park at this one park, Lewis Park, out in the west side of town. So then when the opportunity arose, and again I'll say, I was also in the city of Stockton, we went into bankruptcy. An incredibly difficult time for any social worker. All of a sudden, right, you're trying to lift people up and then you're having to make cuts in incredibly painful ways. So again, the opportunity came to run for state senate or state assembly, and people said, you can't run, you're in the city in bankruptcy. I'm like, well, again, my people know me, they know I show up, and so let's let them decide. And so I was elected to the state assembly in 2012, and have been reelected every time. And then people say, well, why would you give up a safe assembly seat to run for a state senate seat, which is a less safe seat, and there was already somebody running. But since I have been in office, again, mentorship is really important to me. We have a really rich internship program in our office. I try to encourage as many women as I can to run, many Latinas, many LGBT folks to run. And what I tell them all the time is prepare yourselves, and when doors open, don't let your fear stop you, right? Fear is just our courage dressed up a little bit for a minute. And if we can't feel that fear, then we can't feel that courage that it takes to take that step. So I was like, well, should I run? Should I not run? And then someone said to me, what would you tell somebody else? And would a man hesitate for a minute? Oh, hell, God, I'm in. All right? And so that is how I decided to run for state senate. And because I had to think and ask myself, who do I think is there somebody better than me to represent this area? Right? I grew up in Stanislaus County. I have represented over 50% of the Senate district for about the last 12 years. I have been effective. My second year in office, I didn't plan to do it this soon, but I passed the Death with Dignity Act, a very landmark piece of legislation in the state of California and in the country. I was able to get a bill passed, $1 billion for solar housing, for low-income housing. So that the actual people who pay those bills can feel that in their own pockets. This term, we just passed something about for women who have been on Medi-Cal. When they go in for that, they have a baby, for that first well baby checkup, you go off Medi-Cal. But if you have some kind of mental health issue, we think you should extend that for a full year. So we got that bill passed. I have been very big. Here's one of my huge issues. I think we're going to drown in our trash unless we do something about it. So since I was in the Stockton Stockton City Council, I have been working on that. I think it's a real, both environmental as well as we should be able to make jobs with our trash. Other communities have. So I've taken real leave on the recycling economy. We developed a program where you can get tax breaks if you invest in new equipment or new technologies around recycling and food waste and all of those issues. I've been a big champion for how do we take our agricultural products and what we don't use, take it to food banks. It's a crime, a sin, whatever we want to call it, that we have food deserts and hungry people when we live in one of the most rich agriculture areas in the country, in the world. So I have really come to believe that my mission is to expand dignity to people and to find ways to either break down those barriers or provide pathways. And so when we talk about dignity in the city of Stockton, in my assembly district, I have 4 state prisons. I don't have one public four-year university. As people might know, Stockton's had our share of problems. And when you think about what people see, right? If you can see it, you can be it. And so what do my folks see? 4 prisons that the state has provided for us. And I say that is an inequity that must be addressed. And so this year in the budget, working with Gavin Newsom, we got $2 million in the state budget to be able to do a feasibility study about that. And we fought like negotiating dervishes in order, and the bond we passed at a very late hour in the middle of the night on Friday night before we left to be able to have permissive money for both deferred maintenance and potential new construction in the bond that we just passed. The other issue I'm working on, again, really about dignity, is the issue about transportation and air. So right now, if anyone tries to get over that Altamont Pass, and there are 80,000 people who are commuting every single day. So 2 years ago, I got something called the Valley Link authorized. That is, the EIR is finished. We're looking for funding. I got 600 million. I need about another 800 million. But to connect right here, a new train system from Lathrop all the way up over the Altamont into the Dublin BART station, where you'll be able to get off and walk across and get on BART and then take you the rest of the way in. So those are, 2 massive things that I think provide dignity, right? And jobs, and a different way to continue to transform the value. I will also say, I really have embraced the idea of being a Democrat and being a very pragmatic, progressive Democrat. I am not ashamed to say that I think everybody is deserving of dignity. I am not ashamed to say I think we need to do better with social justice reform, with criminal justice reform, continuing to keep our economy alive in the valley, but also making sure our air is clean, our water is clean, the kinds of issues that I think matter to everyday people. So that's been the way I have served. That is the way I would like to continue to serve. Again, I was on the Democratic Central Committee. I helped form Latina Democratic Club. I helped form Dogs of Greater Stockton. I helped form the Stonewall Democratic Club. Was a founding member of our Pride Board, and walked a lot of precincts. So I know it's clubs and it's people who care, who are talking to people every single day that really go out and make the difference. So I would be honored to have your endorsement. I would be honored to serve you, and to continue to keep rolling this progressive justice down the valley, right? It doesn't have to stop at the Altamont. It can come all the way down the valley, and we can continue to thrive and grow and treat everybody with the dignity and respect that they deserve. Thank you.